you must have seen some incredible talent come through in those days.
At the club, you don't just mean the young people, the young boys, or?
Yeah, the young boys in the club.
Certainly the ones I've just mentioned.
Were there others that you saw?
Oh, the Harvey boys were.
Yeah.
The Harvey boys also, they came to the club virtually as a consequence of their mother working with my mother-in-law.
Right.
So she suggested they come down to Preston, and Steve and Scott played their early games, I think, in the thirds with Ian and myself, which would have been a bit of a eye-opening experience for them.
Yes.
But yeah, they were good. And then you got the senior players, the Ravi Ratnakis, the Rowan Borkelies, the Gemini Pereiras. I didn't play with them, but it was an absolute joy to watch them.
Yes, and be part of the club.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, one of the best parts of my career, I think, was as a committee man, and it was in the 90s period where Greg Hobber led us, and we finally won the first premiership we won. Myself, Ian Murray, Jim Lawrence, a few of the older committee guys, and Greg did suggest that this was one for the old boys.
Right.
And that was a very enjoyable experience as well, because it was a very good committee. A lot of hard-working, long-serving members: Dick Norris, Peter Jones, Harold Duggan, Gus Wilson, Dave Robinson, just to name a few.
You've covered a lot, but you just mentioned that you got onto the committee, and from recollections when I got to the club myself in 71, 72, you may have been on the committee at that stage. And not long after that, you became treasurer?
It's an interesting concept they had at the time, because it's a fairly large committee, but the captains were, I'm sure they were encouraged or expected to attend committee meetings in the playing season. So for the first 2 or 3 years, I was attending committee meetings in that respect. I think in 73, 74, something like that, I took on the treasurer's role. I did that for 4 or 5 years, and then became secretary for 5 years, I think, before Dave Robinson took over. And I think one of the great aspects of our club is for example, the longevity of someone like Dick Norris in the official capacity, but secretaries, Dave Robinson, who I took over from as secretary, it might have been Dick, but certainly David Robinson took over from me and did it for a long time, and then Gus Wilson, I think, took over from him, did it for a hell of a long time as well.
Yes, it's amazing actually when you look at the honour board at the club of officials, and for such a long period of time there are actually few names up on the board, which is, in comparison, say, to people who've won batting averages, it goes on and on and on, but we've had longevity from some outstanding administrators.
We did. I think that was why we had such a successful club. We did have a very good administration. That's certainly stood us in good stead.
Back to your playing career, I always used to find facing you in the nets not a pleasant experience.
What was that? Was I smiling or something?
No, you used to hustle in, and I could never quite work out why you didn't play at a higher grade, because you hustled in and the ball seemed to rush on.
I think one of my problems was I was not a good fielder. I didn't particularly enjoy fielding either. So, and from an early age, certainly under 16s and prior, just playing for fun, I could bat and bowl. I deemed myself to be an all-rounder. And I think that's probably worked to my disadvantage. I think I should have, in hindsight, probably concentrated on batting. But I often used to think, and I still reflect on it now, that if you're only an opening batsman, for example, and over a 4-week period, 2-day games, you open the batting on day one, and you're out in the first over. You sit and watch your teammates make a million bloody runs. The next day, you're out in the field all day. So that's 2 Saturdays gone. The next week, lose the touch in the field all day. The 4th Saturday, you're out in the batting again, you're out in the first over again. Okay, you should be better than that, but it can happen.
Yes.
So that's 4 Saturdays, and if you're not doing anything else besides batting, it's a pretty frustrating exercise.
Yes.
So I was always comforted by the fact that if I didn't make runs, I'd be getting the bowl most likely.
Yes.
But I think that probably worked to my disadvantage, that maybe I didn't work hard enough at my batting.
Yes.
And I wasn't the most beautiful batsman of my team. I was renowned for being a bit stodgy, I suppose. But
what was your highlight with the ball?
Probably the game in the seconds, actually. I didn't bowl a heck of a lot in the seconds. And I came into the seconds probably from the age, except for my first stint when I was about 18, probably in my late 20s. As an opening batsman, pretty much got the occasional bowl. But there was one day at Preston, and I think we've been dismissed for 100 odd or so. And Ian Baggett was the captain. Ian Baggett or Mick Ryan, I'm not sure. But I got thrown the ball and I got 7 for 17 off 17 overs. Preston, as you can imagine, the wicket was pretty helpful. The ball was looping around a bit. The outfield was slow as usual. That was by far you get into that zone where you feel like you're going to get a wicket every ball, and it didn't happen too often in my life, I can assure you. But that was probably the highlight.
Yes, outstanding.
Over my career, I ended up probably playing the last 15 years as a spinner. And that was a mixture of offies and wrong-uns, and didn't spin a leggy very much. But as you got older and wilier and you're playing against some of the lowly thirds and probably more the fourths, but they didn't have a clue what a wrong-un was. They'd play for a ball that was going the other way and it would go straight on them. They're all good parts of the game.
Absolutely. You mentioned one outstanding batting performance in a grand final. So you did you make any centuries?
I made 2. I think one was against Newport East. They might have been called Newport A&A in that time. We moved into BJCA in the mid-70s maybe, because the sub-district thirds and fourths have become pretty weak. You might have been playing sides 3 times a year. So I moved into that competition, which was much stronger. I got 2. I think one was, I think it was against Newport East, and one might have been against Altona or Altona North. One of them I got there with a runner, which a lot of my friends constantly reminded me of, that I couldn't make 100 without the use of a runner. It wasn't a deliberate ploy, but it certainly helped, I must admit.
Yeah. Well, normally with a runner it doesn't end particularly well. It usually ends in confusion and the finger going up somewhere, doesn't it? So you obviously teamed well.
I think I might have given him a stern lecture. It worked out pretty good. But I guess for 30 years, it's not a lot of centuries to report anyway.
There's a lot of guys who haven't made a century.
That's true. That's true.
To get 2.
I guess it wouldn't have been the most beautiful innings to watch either.
Doesn't say that in the scorebook.
No, that's true.
That's right. Or on the ball. Have you still got the trophy? We used to hand out
trophies. I've still got some in there, but no, I wouldn't have a clue really. But I just think the other day, we've got that much clutter around the house, and that is probably the first stuff that should go. But it's a little bit like cricket. I should have retired at the very latest 40. But cricket to me was like a kid with a dummy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need it, but I couldn't throw it out.
Yes.
And just the very thought of not being out there on a nice sunny day like this and batting and hopefully making a 50, certainly wasn't thinking of 100, that's for sure.
Yes.
Or even out there rolling the arm over was just something that I couldn't bring myself to do until I was 49 when I retired. It was a bloody easy decision then. I didn't make a run, didn't take a wicket, so that decision was very easy.
Yes. Steve, you were an innovator in the recruiting area. You had the foresight to recruit our first Sri Lankan into the club around about 1975, 76 or thereabouts, Branu Ahmed. How did he come to the club?
I worked with him.
Did you?
Yes, he was playing with a club called, Telegraph in the VJCA. He was living, I think, in Altana, but we worked together at Airport West, Ultra Furniture. And, I don't know how it came about, but I convinced him to come across to Preston. It was a bit of a shock for him because whoever was coach at that time, we used to do a bit of running, and he hated running. He said his words were, if God wanted me to run, I'd have been born a horse. But he was a very competent batsman.
Very talented.
But I don't think we ever saw the best of him.
No.
I think, and when he left us, he went to the Yarraville Club, which was a very strong club out in the Maribyrnong area, somewhere around that way. Had a lot more success there. But he always looked very, very good, but didn't really make a great contribution as far as batting goes. Interesting story, when he did leave Preston, he decided he wanted to go back to the Yarraville Club. No. He went to Sunshine.
Yes.
He left us to go to Sunshine. A bloke called Gary Nicol, I think, got in his ear. Anyway, he was fine with me. That was fine. But he had to get a clearance. So when I went to the committee at the time, and I don't know who it was, but someone suggested it would be a good idea, it was unheard of at the time, I'm sure, that we get a transfer fee for him. So it was decided that we would seek $100 from Sunshine, and $100 was probably a reasonable amount at that time, that we get $100 from Sunshine in order for him to be cleared. I hope this doesn't contravene the Coulter Law Act or anything that might have applied to sub-district cricket. But I think I had to go and knock on the door of the Sunshine secretary and hand him a clearance for Branu. Branu became Brian. He got sick of people calling him Bruno and whatever, and so he became Brian at that stage. But yeah, I had to go and knock on the door and hand over the clearance form and pick up $100.
Unbelievable. Probably the first and only time it's ever happened.
Probably.
Yeah.
And it had to be, for personal, because I was secretary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was an interesting experience. I still occasionally had a chat to him during COVID. He's had some health issues, but he's got his own business in IT and still working, and he's doing well.
Nice.
He asked after several of the players of the day that he remembered playing with. So.
We'll have to get him into the 1860 club.
That may not be a bad idea.
Yes.
I'll interpret for him.
Okay. Now, one of your other recruits was a young guy called Matt Hillam.
Oh, yeah?
Who played with you and finished up playing 86 or 88 games with the club.
Did he?
Played with the firsts and seconds and thirds.
No, he didn't play in the first.
Didn't play in the first?
No, he played in the seconds.
Yeah.
And I think we only played 1 or 2 games together.
Oh, really? Yeah.
He played at Greensboro Districts. He had 3 years of under 12s, 2 and under 14s, 2 and under 16s. He was only a little whippersnapper in those first 3 years in under 12s and probably 14s as well. And as we tried to develop a technique for him, he was just, the bigger boys were just clobbering the ball. So they were getting all the accolades and all the runs, while he was just getting his 3 or 4 not out just by poking the ball around. But then we took him down to for a bit of coaching with Terry Gannon at Northcote. Mm-hmm. So he did a bit of coaching with Terry, which was good. And then after the under 16s, he came along to Preston with me. And yeah, by that stage he'd developed physically, and he was certainly a much more attractive batsman to Watson what I was. He was he liked to hit the ball.
Yeah.
Also bowled a few funny looking leg spin varieties, and one day he captained the thirds for whatever reason, and he took 7 wickets bowling these funny little leg spinners. So as captain, it must have been a trait that you learned of his own man, I suppose, to bowl yourself when you're captain.
Excellent.
And he also made 2 centuries in that time.
Okay.
Took me 30 years, took him about 7 or 8.
And he's a member of the 1860 Club as well, so father and son.
Oh well, the BSRs would be looking pretty healthy on the times he goes there, I guess.
Excellent. You've had an outstanding association with the club as a player, as a captain, and an administrator, and a first-class administrator. That your contribution has just been absolutely outstanding, and the club has been much, much better for having you, Steve, associated with it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Feel like open mic, openly.
There you go.
I speak openly.
Openly.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's been a
Good
pleasure.
on you, Steve. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Thank you.